Well, Jake, how the news is late breaking. It looks like Greg Brockman, GDB, just quit.
Whoa, okay, whoa. We got breaking news. And then I need one of my team members to accept the This Week in Startups co-hosting. And then I think you can pull up tweets and show the tweets as they happen. So if I invite speakers, TWI Startups is in the room. I'm inviting you to be a co-host. So one of my producers should be coming up here, and I'll invite you to be a co-host. Apologies to everybody. This is like trying to do 3 things at once.
Pull it up
Okay.
here I'll just pull it up on the Zoom
Okay.
for a second, Jake. Oh, there you go.
Okay, great. Yeah, and you can also pull it up. Just so you know, Sunny, there's a way to show tweets inside of a Spaces. I don't know exactly how to do that, but we'll figure that out.
Yeah.
Okay. And I just invited This Week in Startups to be not a speaker, but a co-host. So if the This Week in Startups handle, whichever one of my producers using that, can accept the host responsibilities, that'd be great. Okay, just accepted, but it shows you as a speaker. All right, we're live on YouTube, we're live on Spaces, and we're recording the Zoom. All right, here we go in 3. Let me get my notes in front of me. So this is interesting. Breaking news live. Don't need that. 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 Need this. Okay. And so for my team, if you can take, if you can give me any great questions from the YouTube chat, just put them into Sunny and I's chat or something. Then he could read the questions. Okay. Here we go. Hey, everybody. Hey, everybody. Welcome to an emergency podcast. This is an emergency breaking news podcast here on This Week in Startups. Sam Altman has apparently been fired from OpenAI. OpenAI released a statement this afternoon. And Sam quickly confirmed that with a tweet saying, I loved my time at OpenAI. It was transformative for me personally and hopefully the world a little bit. Most of all, I love working with such talented people. We'll have more to say about what's next later. Minor disclaimer up top here. I know Sam socially. We're not besties or anything, but we were both Sequoia Scouts together, both Sequoia founders together. And we've got, literally hundreds of contacts together. Yeah, I think he's obviously, I've watched him from his first startup, Sunny, through running Y Combinator, investing in a lot of great companies to this point. So this is kind of a shocking moment because we just had OpenAI's demo day. Sam was on stage. This has become a $90 billion company. This is, I think, one of the biggest news stories of the year. Would you agree, Sunny?
Oh, definitely. And, even we had...
Sunny, we can't hear you. You have to unmute yourself up on the Spaces.
I keep moving the things around.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, definitely one of the the biggest story in tech this year, for sure. And, hugely impactful because we have a giant ecosystem of, maybe 5,000 plus companies that are being built in and around AI, and many of which were building on OpenAI's platforms. And so this has pretty huge impact to a number of companies, depending on, and we'll maybe talk about it here, but what happens with OpenAI going forward and, what's the next, what are some of the next things? Because, we just did this late breaking news, GDB, who was also one of the co-founders, Greg Brockman, just quit.
Okay.
Yeah.
He was removed from the board.
Yes.
And so this is a very dynamic situation that we have to explain. There is a board of directors. The board of directors is made up of...
we have it in there, the notes here.
Yeah. And famously, Elon originally funded the company. He left the board. Reid Hoffman was on the board. He left the board, I think, because of conflicts. That was a couple of months ago. But the board is made up of the founders of OpenAI, the nonprofit, which became a for-profit company, and then some industry experts. And as part of this action by the board, Greg Brockman was stepping down, or they said will be stepping down as chairman of the board and will remain in his role as company reporting to the CEO. However, moments ago, he has quit, which would, to me, mean Sam and he are going to go start their own company, and he is quitting, in protest. And that makes it super interesting, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I mean, if you're Microsoft, you've put a lot of money into this company, you've put a lot behind it, you've launched, just 3 days ago, they had their big conference Ignite, where they launched a bunch of new functionality that's built around OpenAI, upwards of 10 different co-pilots and GPT-4 offerings for their enterprise customers. This has to be, incredibly kind of, I guess, worrying, right? You have the co-founders, the CEO. I think Greg was a president, not the CTO. I think that was the who just took over, the woman who just took over for that. So, yeah, I'm just processing it as quickly as you are as it's coming in.
Yes. And so this would be the equivalent, I think, of Larry and Sergey being fired, or Larry being fired and Sergey quitting moments later. This is basically what we've witnessed. It's a $90 billion company. It's had tens of billions of dollars invested in it. It's fastest company to 100 million users. And let's be honest, it's rocked the entire industry. It's changed the entire technology landscape, and it's obviously changed the world. So then the question becomes, why? What happened and why? Well, the board did this news dump on a Friday, which is always a classic PR move, to miss the news cycle, which is one of the stupidest things you could do, because all it does is make everybody point out you're dumping this on a Friday so it doesn't get news, and it just creates twice as much news. And then the truth is, over the weekend, people have time. And so, and it really upsets journalists who now have to go to work on a Friday night and leave their families or whatever plans they have to cancel. I remember when I was running a magazine and Engadget, and and here I am as running a podcast. It does create this amount of chaos. We are live on Twitter Spaces. We're live on YouTube. We will take your questions. That's a programming note. But here is what OpenAI's board said. They fired Sam Altman for not being, quote, consistently candid in his communication. Now, on a housekeeping basis, we're going to do some speculation here. One thing we're not going to speculate about is any of the gnarly allegations floating around about personal conduct.
Stuff.
We're not in the business of that, and we'll just leave it at that. On a business basis, consistently candid in his communications. What does that say to you, Sonny? Knowing what you know about startups and boards.
Yeah.
Consistently candid in his communications. So this is more than one, right?
Yeah. Well,
instance. This is a pattern.
This company is very complex, right? Because of, let's list out maybe some of the complexities that they've shared. And so we won't speculate. The company went from being a nonprofit to a for-profit, which there's a lot of complexity. I think that's comes from that I think hasn't been very clear to a bunch of different people. The company has had a few security leaks, one earlier this year and one earlier this week. The company has taken billions of dollars in funding in non-traditional ways. That means, it's just, typically when a company is financed, money comes in, shares come out, but some of their financing is in terms of, resources like, credits or whatever it happens to be on clouds. And they have a very complex deal with Microsoft that, we just know the surface of, maybe at a high level. A bunch of talent that has, came out of Google, a bunch of talent that left and founded other companies like Anthropic. And so it's at the center. And then there's we've talked about this in our regular pod. There's the data that the company has used, currently and in the past to train their models. So there's a lot of information. There's a lot of things that had already been out there with respect to what this company has been, has had to deal with. And
which is to say, if I may summarize, when you make a startup and you're moving fast, you may break things. And Sometimes you got to break some eggs to make an omelet. And so the broken eggs that could have been causing communications issues with the board, as they put it, is maybe the training data.
Mhm.
That's a vector. That's number one. Number two, withholding information about a security breach. Or downplaying a security breach with a company like Microsoft, which is at the center of security because they have the largest footprint of desktops in the world, I believe, still,
Yep.
by far. And we all know, if you've had a Windows machine previously, phishing, viruses, there's all it's the biggest surface area, so it gets the most attacks. In fairness to them, so that's a second thing. And then the third bucket would be who owns the company, who owns shares in the company, and the corporate structure. I will add a fourth thing to that, which is deal making. So what do we mean by deal making? Sam is a consummate deal maker. He has been an incredible deal maker at Y Combinator. I think he had an LP in Peter Thiel. That's what I was told. And he had made a lot of large bets doing SPVs or individual investments, special purpose vehicles in companies prior, like maybe while being at Y Combinator, maybe while being involved in OpenAI. And I mean, listen, what a great deal maker running Y Combinator, also getting Elon to put $50 million reportedly into OpenAI as a nonprofit, and other people like Reid Hoffman to join the board. So an incredible networker, incredible deal maker. Now, why is that last piece important? This is the speculation part here. I'm going to do a little bit of speculation here. In Silicon Valley, we have a term. It's called no conflict, no interest. What does it mean? Everything's conflicted here. So, I might be I'm an LP, as one example, in 24 venture funds.
Yep.
I might invest in a company. I might be on the cap table through another venture fund in a competitor. So it's completely possible after I invest in, I don't know, company A, that their competitor company B gets invested in by one of the companies I'm an LP in. People go from one company to the other. You get the idea. And so no conflict, no interest. Well, if Sam's out there doing a ton of deals, what deals do we know he's done? I know for a fact that OpenAI gave preferential access to the API to many startups, many Y Combinator startups. So that was done. And if you had a financial interest in them and you got them early access, is that a conflict? Sure it is. Is that an awesome conflict if you have the ability to do it? Of course it is. Is it illegal or anything? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Is it unfair to the people who don't have access? Probably. But hey, life's not fair, right? You have access to a supplier. That supplier gives you that. And then my understanding is he was the backer of Humane, WorldCoin, in crypto. And then maybe
the nuclear reactor company,
Sure. So which of these might have access to training data, OpenAI's tools or whatever? And then he was doing some sort of deal with Johnny Ive, or possibly doing something with Johnny Ive, to do another thing that sounded like it would compete with Humane, possibly as an AI hardware device. So I'm going to go with that last bucket first. What are your thoughts handicapping this, that this had to do with his extraordinary deal making, and then maybe this comment he made where he does not own any shares. Remember, he was in front of Congress. He doesn't own any shares in OpenAI. Yep. How does the CEO and founder not own any shares? Sachs speculated it on All In. We had a discussion about that. And Humane's launch just happened. And I think that might have been a little screwed up by this Johnny Ive news. So here we are. No conflict, no interest. Sonny, go.
Well, look, when you've created the technology that's been the most impactful since the launch of the iPhone App Store and the momentum it's working with, it's inevitable, to your point, that these conflicts are there. And it's probably almost impossible to disclose them at a pace to keep the board active. I'd like to add one other thing. The board of this company is a little bit non-traditional because it doesn't have, what we would call like typical board members that are, venture investors or board members of public companies. It's a little, and, there's Adam is there and he obviously runs Quora, but like the other folks are related, either work for the company and some external folks. And so I do think The ability for conflict to arise is really, really high with this with OpenAI, but it may not be malicious. It just may be at the pace of everything that's happening. You got to put yourself in
Hmm.
Sham's shoes and think about how many inbounds you get on every single day. There's 5,000 AI companies, right?
Hmm.
And they all want to, get access to OpenAI or do a partnership or get funding from OpenAI. OpenAI has funded companies as well. So
Hmm.
I, there's so much that could be happening here that it's not on purpose, but just maybe even just hard to keep up with the disclosures.
Could be. And it could be the board had, based on their phrasing here, a frustrating time with the second, third, or fourth time this happened.
Yeah,
Maybe.
yeah,
And then there was this allegation like, oh, maybe he lied to Congress when he said he didn't own any shares.
yeah,
Like you could say, and I'm going to do massive amount of speculation here. Sam could say, I don't own any shares.
yeah,
Sam Altman, Jason Calacanis, don't own any shares. But a foundation controlled by Sam or a fund controlled by Sam that invested or bought secondary shares from other workers, whatever it was, could own an interest in OpenAI. And so Sam, don't own any shares, but my foundation does, right?
yeah,
So it's possible. I've seen people, use the technicalities of language to kind of justify things. I'm not saying that's the case here, but there's always been this very weird dynamic of he doesn't own anything in OpenAI and he's doing all these deals. And how does he not own anything if everybody else does? And then
yeah,
remember, it was only how many weeks ago that there was this breaking news about a secondary at 90 billion.
yeah,
That was the week before the OpenAI demo day, I believe.
yeah. Well, I just want to maybe say something on the other side, and then we can dive deeper into
Sure.
it. I think in the Congress statement, if we can pull it up, but if I recall, he did say, I've done well in other places.
Hmm.
And, like you mentioned, he's been involved in some of these record breaking funds that have had, hundreds of X return. And so it is, potentially feasible that that he does not have it in any kind of related entity or entity that's pushed off, but just, he decided to give it all away as a donation to, Stanford or so. Yeah, I'm saying Stanford because he went there, right? But like, some place that he's very passionate about.
Hmm.
Now it's possible, right? Now, I think,
Yeah, sure.
I think when it comes to, thinking about like companies on the cap table, this company's not that big, Jason, right?
Hmm.
So, and it's pretty straightforward for, either the board or the general counsel of the company or the outside counsel to understand every single entity on the cap table. Um, and then to come back and maybe ask, like, if sometimes people do have family trusts and whatnot and hold things in,
Sure.
in those places. But so if someone makes a comment like that in a, in front of Congress, I'm sure, your lawyers would come back to you and say, hey,
Hmm.
we know,
Be
ABC
careful.
want to, yeah, be careful. Yeah.
Well, that and
Yeah.
that this is again super speculation here. Maybe he said that in good faith, and then
Yeah.
somebody said, "Hey, not exactly accurate," and the press picked up on that. That became a big discussion topic. So maybe that was one of the things the board said with
Yeah.
communication. Maybe there are other issues like that, and so then we go to the security one. So maybe you could unpack the speculation about security because the GPTs got launched. And then I remember seeing this headline that Microsoft took everybody at Microsoft, all their developers, off of OpenAI.
Yeah. Well, let's maybe rewind back. So they had an incident, I would say, maybe March this year, where people's information was getting leaked. And so, and look, they're growing fast, right? So it's kind of, I guess you have to sort of expect it at the scale they're operating at. And then what sort of happened at the launch of the GPTs was people were able to go and look at the private information that folks were putting into the GPT to help, build them. Like, we did one as well. And so I think given how fast it was moving, how many GPTs were being created, it was probably a proactive move by Microsoft to say, hey, let's not allow our employees to rush into that ecosystem, fill it up with perhaps confidential documents and confidential, text and other, pictures, whatever it happens to be that you want to use to create a GPT, and not put it in there. Because I think the experience as we did, on the last pod is incredible, and you could do something quite quickly and push it out there and have people start using it. But I think the security edges of it were still, being kind of finalized and or hardened.
Mm.
Like we took
Yes,
the launch text and put it in there, and we took it from the public website. But you might not have been as comfortable if we were taking private,
sure.
placement documents or something like that. Yeah.
All right. So Microsoft put $10 billion into this company. They don't own a board seat. That is absolutely bonkers, but they do own 49% of the company. So that's insane. So this is also kind of a governance problem here. Who is
Yeah.
on the board? Well, you had Greg, you had Sam. They're both off the board. And then I think everybody else was
No, Ilya.
independent. Yeah. Oh,
No,
so Ilya is
yeah.
the chief scientist and
Scientist,
co-founder.
co-founder.
So that's, yeah. And then you had a couple of independent directors, Quora CEO, Adam D'Angelo, a technology entrepreneur, Tasha McCauley, and Georgetown Center for Security and Emerging Technology, Helen Toner. So the independent directors would have had to do this, right? Because you would have to leave Sam out of this if it had to do with Sam.
Yep.
Then you have the 5 of them. You need to have 3 to have a majority to do this. And Greg would, I guess, vote in favor of Sam because he just quit. And
Yep.
you would think that Ilya would as well. So that would be 2. And then that means all 3 of the other ones had to vote to remove Sam if it was, in fact, a 5-person vote. And now, Quora CEO Adam went to YC. I would think he would be very loyal to Sam. I don't know the relationship of these other 2 folks and how they wound up on the board, but that is also an interesting rub here. Is getting rid of Sam is an incredibly polarizing, as we've seen just in a couple of hours. The whole internet's like, this is not cool. I love Sam. He's very popular.
Yep.
And he was just on demo day. So that's the thing I'm having this hard this
even closer to that, yesterday he was at the APEC conference, right?
He was at APAC representing OpenAI.
Or
I didn't even
events.
realize that.
Yeah,
At
yeah.
events, huh?
Yeah, at
So
events.
this is probably all happening in real time.
Yeah.
Wow. So I wonder if this goes back to the OpenAI day, because that was okay. So let's talk about Microsoft. Satya Nadella showed up, right?
Oh yeah, he was on stage.
He was on stage, and that was a
Yep.
little bit of a awkward interaction, I think. I wonder,
Well,
we'll look back on that and see if there's something there.
Well, no, the interaction was good because
Hmm.
what Sam did call out was, hey, people are, and he had a tweet about it. People are speculating about the relationship between Microsoft and OpenAI, and he used that moment to solidify that the relationship is stronger than ever. Fast forward to this week, Microsoft has Ignite, and they launch upwards of 10 new products, kind of built on OpenAI. So I feel like they had just squashed all the rumors that were out there about the potential tension between the 2 companies.
There was also a tweet where Sam said, we're not like
Yeah.
sandbagging any of their software products with ChatGPT, but this also is, I think, the collision course that the 2 firms are on. Microsoft wants to build a Copilot into the desktop of Windows.
Yep.
ChatGPT is an amazing app, and it's $20 a month. And so Microsoft has all the data we're going to use on our desktop. And then you have OpenAI with this app that has 100 million users, many millions of them, I believe, paying $20 a month.
Yeah, 100 million weekly. I think they said at
100 million weekly users. I wonder how many are paid. I'm going to go with 3%. So maybe I would say 1 or 2 million people are paying. 1 or 2 million people are paying $20. 2 million people, $20 a month, 400. It's $500 million, and then maybe $500 million in API calls. So then the next speculation is, Is this financial? Is this financial? But before we get to that, there's a collision course, isn't there? Microsoft wants consumers and business users to do this, and ChatGPT and OpenAI are selling the same thing.
Yeah.
So how does that work in your mind? Who wins? If it's built into the desktop, how does OpenAI compete? Or if OpenAI has a superior app and everybody gets used to using it there, why does Microsoft own 49% of this? It's
Well,
like it's like Mac, and it would be as if Microsoft owned 49% of the Mac OS or something, or the iPhone. It's so
well,
conflicted, right?
let me give you a possible way, and I'd love your take on it. I think if you look at OpenAI in two distinct ways, let's look at OpenAI as an API and
Mm-hmm.
an API for product led growth. So, for Silicon Valley plus, or not Silicon Valley, anybody, any entrepreneur who's out there that wants to build, they can go get the API and build something around it, right? They can add a feature to their product, or they can basically make a product from the ground up using OpenAI. And, we've demoed a bunch of these type of things, right? Things that are standalone, things that are features. And then I think, and that's like the product led growth of it. That's, what I would say is if you look back to the era of cloud, there were businesses that were built cloud native. And then there were other businesses that just lifted and shifted to the cloud. And so the way I've been kind of thinking about it is Microsoft picks up the business that is like enterprise, more enterprisey. That's like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
you want to put this into your product, you're a customer of ours already. But anybody that is trying to do something product led, they go through the OpenAI path with the OpenAI APIs. So I feel like it was, even though it's you can kind of see a conflict there, but
Mm.
they have two different competencies, right? Where Microsoft really owns the
Sure.
enterprise and all, CIO, CTO types, and OpenAI owns the startup ecosystem and products. That's one way to think about it.
Yeah, there's so much consumer going on at Microsoft that's not appreciated by
Well,
people like us who are in Silicon Valley because we're all Mac heads,
yeah,
and you never see a Windows laptop here. But then everybody's using Windows. When
yeah,
you look at your Google Analytics, you see just how many people
yeah,
actually use Windows, and also Xbox, and other
yeah,
products they have.
yeah. And that's one
I'm
where you
leaving the
can see,
Zune and the Surface out of
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. But that's one where you can see tremendous conflict because
Yeah.
Microsoft lost the search war. Search is fundamentally changing,
Mm.
and they want to win, and they went out of their way to eliminate Bing from the branding this past week and relaunch the product just as Copilot,
Mm.
right? Windows Copilot. And so that's an area where you can imagine there could be, some substantial conflict between the businesses, going directly after the consumers.
All right. Microsoft, according to reports, found out about this 1 minute before OpenAI published their statement. This must have been, if the board took this action, how many days have they been dealing with this issue before taking this action, would you say, in your professional experience running
Well,
companies?
yeah. Well, like think about, let's go to a company you were close with a bit, Uber, right? When they,
Yep.
they had to deal with like some issues.
There were some
Um,
issues, yes.
yeah, and
And issues.
yeah, it was a multi-month process that involved,
Close to a year, yeah.
yeah, that involved external firms, that involved, external counsel, and even they brought in some external people, I think, right, that weren't
Mm.
even board members, right, I recall. And so it's really incredible to think about how quickly that this has happened,
Mm.
outside of it being like something that's so black and white, that's like, criminal or something like that, like something that's not subjective, that's it's the only way you can think about it moving so quickly.
I don't think this could be criminal because they said it was an issue with communicating with the board.
Yeah.
And so that's somewhere between like an ethics or an honesty problem.
Okay.
But maybe they're trying to protect themselves from future lawsuits. So the board has to say something in some ways a bit neutral,
Yeah.
because if they were to say, we fired this person for doing X, Y, and Z bad things, then all of a sudden the lawsuits come out and they're like, well, the board is in charge and they said this
Yeah.
person did it. So
Yep.
that's why a lot of times it's the services were no longer needed. We decided to part ways. They want to spend more time with their family. And then
Yeah.
all the craziness comes out. By the way, in 72 hours, I guarantee you we'll have all the details of this. Everything will leak. We'll know exactly what's going on. And so, just to hold people over, we're walking through what could have happened here. And listen, Microsoft didn't know it. What do you think of this other theory that they're just blowing through money at an alarming pace? This was another concept. Hey, they keep lowering the API cost. They're burning through tons of money. He
Yep.
said recently they're going to need to raise tens of billions more,
Yep.
and that maybe they were having cash flow problems. And because there was an email that went out that said you have to pay for your API calls ahead of time.
Yeah. I
That's
think that wasn't real. I didn't get that
okay.
email. So I
Well,
feel
they
like
said it was
that's
going out to select people. So I'm wondering if it was
okay.
going out to people who were spending $5,000 a day on the API, or,
Okay.
$100,000 a month. And they said, hey,
Okay.
you got to pay in advance, maybe because they thought they would get stiffed, or maybe they thought
Yeah.
maybe cash flow
Mm.
problems. I can't imagine they would have cash flow problems. It's only a couple of hundred people, right, at the company.
Yeah.
So, and 10 billion raised.
Yeah. And even if you had that, you don't publicly fire your CEO. That's, in this kind of manner, right? Like I think there's usually again, all these things have a
Mm,
process behind them. Look, you've dealt with a lot,
sure.
a lot less, right? And so, oh, I guess the email is real. I just got a text from my co-founder saying we got that email, so it is
Oh, we
real.
did get it. Okay.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
let's
yeah. So
let's
who's
speculate
listening
anew
in?
then.
Yeah,
Under what circumstance does a company tell everybody using its API they need to fill up their credits in advance? That's kind
yeah,
of standard, isn't it? Like, don't you buy Zapier credits or some credits in advance? But I guess for
yeah,
AWS, they have your credit card and they just bill you at the end
yeah,
of the month. So
yeah,
both of these things can be true, right? Both
yeah,
models exist.
yeah. Yeah, I guess, like that's not so crazy. I mean, to put that out today is a bit crazy, but you know, a lot more weird stuff is happening right now. So that's kind of really interesting to think about.
Hmm. All
Yeah.
right. There was also a unverified anonymous Reddit comment. Again, unverified. Could be fan fiction, but it's interesting. Somebody claiming to be from OpenAI is saying, I feel compelled as someone close to the situation to share additional context about Sam and the company. Engineers raise concerns about rushing tech to market without adequate safety reviews in the race to capitalize on ChatGPT hype. But Sam charged ahead. That's just who he is. Wouldn't listen to us. It's kind of on brand. Not the wouldn't listen to, but charging ahead. He does believe in speed. He's said that very
Yeah.
publicly when he was running YC. And he's right. Startups go fast. His focus increasingly seemed to be fame and fortune, not upholding our principles as a responsible nonprofit. Hmm, I've heard that. I think that's a lot of jealousy too.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's very rare for somebody to get catapulted to this level of notoriety on a global basis and to be meeting with heads of state, et cetera. He made unilateral business decisions aimed at profits that diverged from our mission when he proposed the chat GPT store and revenue sharing across the line. This signaled our core values were at risk. So the board made the tough decision to remove him as CEO. Greg also faced some accountability and stepped down. That doesn't make much sense. I think this is what do the
Yeah.
kids say? I think this is cap. I'm gonna go with this is cap.
You're not supposed to
Um,
say that, but yeah.
yeah.
Um,
I mean, facts
yeah,
are cap. All right.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I will take some questions from the audience. I see David from the LP podcast is here. I'm going to bring you up. And David, welcome to the program. I'll give you a second to collect your thoughts and ask a question. If you want to ask a question, raise your hand and we'll take a couple of questions from our audience on Twitter Spaces, and we'll take them if you just type them into the YouTube chat room. David, are you there?
He's like spinning for connecting.
Ah, yes. So, and let me add another person or two.
Well,
We'll
while
add
you're
this
doing
other
that,
question.
Jaco,
Yes, please.
I'll bring up something like so impact to the company. I want your take on this. Founder led to not founder led. And we've seen that many times in Silicon Valley. What's your take?
Oh, this is a great point. I would say that losing the founders is obviously disastrous. The lead that ChatGPT has is not de minimis. So you have to hold these two contradictory thoughts in your head. Sam was not writing code. I wonder, I don't know if Greg's writing code or
Oh,
not.
he was. He was. He
Greg
posts
was
about
writing
it
code.
all the time. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was
So
posting
Greg's,
about, just on one thing, Jake Hill, he was posting about a bug fix like 2 days ago. Like you
yes.
just
Okay.
scroll back
So
like one
this
day
is
in his
where,
Twitter.
this is
Yeah.
where you have to like pause for a second and think it through. So if I was on the board, I'd be like, who's writing the code? Who's the figurehead? Sam's the figurehead. Sam's cutting deals. Do we need any more deals? Doesn't sound like we need many more deals. We got Microsoft. We got 10 billion. You know, there's tons of interest in this company. We got $1 billion in revenue. They must be close to profitable with $1 billion in revenue. I would think they're close to profitable. I don't know what they're spending on servers, et cetera. But putting capital expense out of this with 300 people and $1 billion in revenue, you know, it's 3 million per person. Now I know they're spending millions of dollars per developer, upwards of 10 billion. I heard with stock options, et cetera. So yeah, this to me sounds like Greg. There's the Greg fixing a bug. So Greg is a big loss. Sam would be a gigantic loss 2 years ago, but today with everything set up the way he organized it, probably he's got so many deals done, it probably won't affect the company in the short to midterm. In the long term, sure. What are the next 3 deals? You need his strategy. You need his, networking to do
I think
deals.
master negotiator, this deal that they have. Well, I mean, I think we're going to find out more about the deal with Microsoft, but that deal in many ways, like either it's the greatest deal ever, the worst deal ever, but my feeling, if I would bet, is the greatest deal ever. Like,
oh my God, they took, you can tell it's a great deal because
yeah.
when you first hear it, you're like, oh my God, they made Microsoft look foolish. Then you look at Microsoft stock price, and I'll ask my producers to tell me what Microsoft stock price went up, since they announced the $10 billion investment. I'm guessing it's gone up 100 billion. So yeah. All right. We have a question from YouTube. I think it's AGI, Jason, and Microsoft wants that announced, and he disagrees. Whoever announced AGI first rules the world, and your share price goes to the roof.
I said it differently. I said, if AGI took over, this would be the first thing it did.
Okay. Microsoft gets 75% of OpenAI profits until it makes back its $10 billion investment. I forgot about that. Remember that condition?
Yep.
This is a master negotiation. He got the valuation he wanted. He wanted an absurd, sky high valuation. He got it. He got the 10 billion. And then he just said, yeah, make your money back, but you can only make 100 times your money. I mean, master negotiating. I think his time at Y Combinator really helped him.
Oh, when you see so many deals,
how to negotiate with investors.
Right? Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah. When you see so many deals,
dropped out, Sonny. Try again.
Oh, you coming back, or am I dropped out, or you?
Sonny? Did your AirPod switch? Can you guys hear Sonny? Give me a thumbs up if you can.
Or I can hear you like very
or can you hear me?
You very hear me, faintly. Sonny? Very faintly.
Why don't I hear? Huh. Okay. Thumbs up for me, but I don't hear Sonny. Oh, now I got thumbs up and thumbs down going on here. Hold on one second. Let me see if I can figure
Nick
this
is saying your AirPod switched.
You hear me very faintly. Huh. Did my AirPods are still. Oh no, sorry. Okay, I'm back. I should be back. Okay, sorry about that. So he's a master negotiator. And so, yeah, losing him, just to wrap on that thought. I don't think this is AGI, but that's another interesting point. Could they have discovered something and hid it from the board? That's like some crazy science fiction movie. There are things that are happening in the safety zone that they didn't disclose to the board. I love that speculation. It makes for a great movie, but it doesn't make, I don't think we're close to AGI. So I don't think we've achieved general intelligence.
Yeah. And again, if that had happened, let's just double click into it for completeness. You wouldn't fire the people right away. right? You'd want
Oh,
them
the
around.
opposite.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Like
Quite the
you'd,
opposite. Mhm.
yeah, you'd kind of lock them down a little bit. You wouldn't be like, oh, you're fired. You know,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm going to stick with my original thought that there are some conflict of interests. Now that we've walked through all the possibilities, I'm going to stick with conflicts of interests is my 80% concept here. There are some conflict of interest that the board got tweaked about, and there were multiple ones, no conflict, no interest, that maybe, including his shares in the company, that caused this. When you go through all this, for you, what's the most likely scenario? Security, conflicts of
I
interest,
I'm in conflict.
personal
I'm in
issues?
conflict of interest.
Okay.
Personal issues aside, conflict of interest. I think
Okay. Yeah. If we
the
take personal issues
yeah,
off the table,
yeah,
for obvious reasons, we would never want to speculate about anything like
yeah.
that. Um, yeah, that makes the most sense to me.
And like, you already touched on it. OpenAI is investing in companies. These guys are investing in companies. They're trying to start
The
new
free for all.
companies. It's every, you know, as an investor, it's a bit of a nightmare, right? Because you're kind of sitting there looking at all things happening. And the pace is so quick. Like think about, how much has happened with this thing is just approaching 12 months. So,
Hmm.
probably anywhere from 25 to 100 companies that they're involved in and partnered with,
I'm going to go
investing in.
80%. I'm going to go 70% chance conflict of interest. I'm going to
Yeah,
go 20% chance of a security breach, cover up, weird situation that occurred. 10% something I can't think of.
yeah.
I'm going with that. And again, taking
Yeah.
aside any personal stuff.
Can we bring someone on up from
Sure.
the
Audience. Yes. You have a
spaces? Yeah.
specific person you
There's
want to bring up?
there's well, there, I just the first person on my list, Jared, who's the VP of AI at Vercel, would love to hear what they're
Okay.
saying. So
Jared's coming up. You
let
can
me
just
see.
do it too. If you go to
Yeah, I
the,
I just did. Yeah,
okay, great.
they
So why don't
just
you
spin
handle
as
that?
connecting. So I don't
Okay.
know if I may
Jared,
have
can
to.
you hear us? Why don't you bring up three people? And
Yeah,
I'll
I'm gonna
ask
do that.
everybody to mute themselves. So I'm going to ask Sunny to bring up three speakers at a time.
Okay.
Then I'll call you by name, or Sandeep will call you by name.
Okay. All right.
And then, and it can just be the first three. I don't know if it sorts it
Yeah.
by the number of followers or what, or
Yeah.
probably by,
I'm just doing that as well. Okay.
right.
I see Dan just went on mute. Dan, you're up and you're on mute.
Oh, what a great question. What do you think? You're really well aware of the ecosystem, Sandeep.
Well, yeah, look, I think one of the things, just building on what we just said about, Sam and team, they were able to push the boundaries really, really far, right? Because when you have already had success, plus you've seen a ton of success, you're able to, push. And I think that's one of the reasons OpenAI is where it is. Um, I think now what we're going to see is a chance for maybe some of the other folks to catch up a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and that is good from a competitive standpoint, but in terms of pushing the frontier, like that whole AGI conversation we had, would probably slow down there a bit. So we initially see a catch up of other players
Hmm.
while all this, dust has to settle at
And to just
OpenAI.
repeat so just to repeat the question for the YouTube audience and for the This Week in Startups
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I
episode,
didn't know it's going across.
the question was, how would this affect the ecosystem in the march towards artificial general intelligence?
Yeah.
I agree with you. I think this gives, whatever their lead is, you give the lead, OpenAI's lead 18 months, 12 months is what most people would say, I think. So let's just put it at, they have a 1 year lead. If they have a 1 year lead, I'll give them 18 months, actually. If they have an 18 months lead, this is going to cut it in half. They're going to have a 9 month lead. So everybody else gets to catch up. Right now, they're literally popping champagne corks at Google. And then I'll give you the second order impact. Sam and Greg are going to they're going to announce a $10 billion raise from a sovereign wealth fund tomorrow. Like within 48 hours, I think on Monday, because if you're firing him, I don't know what no compete he has, or if he agreed to some sort of non-compete with a nonprofit, or if he has an employment agreement, if he's not getting equity, how does he have an employment agreement? So this is where weird governance or weird corporate structures can actually cause real issues. i.e., Sam Bankman-Fried. Now, this is not fraud, but you had no board there. Or Elizabeth Holmes had a bunch of like 80-year-old former generals that know nothing about blood and chemistry and biology. So this is what bad governance does. And so even good governance can cause tons of problems. In terms of the race toward artificial general intelligence, it's going to happen, folks. It's just a matter if it's 3, 5, 7, or 10 years. It's going to be one of those numbers. Anything else to add to that, Sonny, or should we let another person speak?
Yeah, let's go to the next one. I think,
Great.
spot on. Okay, I think we brought Jared up. Jared, you're on mute. Hey.
Okay. Multi-part question.
Yeah,
Jared says, first up, Sonny, he believes it's a commercial interest kind of conflict, like we do. Number two, he's wondering, with Greg leaving, what happens to the engineering team?
engineers.
Do they start bolting? What are their non-competes deals look like? Now, remember, again, this is a California company. They put their office in San Francisco. There's no non-competes in this. I mean, New York State and some of the Northeast, I think Massachusetts, Boston, obviously, these got non-competes up there. It's one of the reasons people speculate that the West has done better than the East Coast on technology, is the non-compete issue. So what do you think? Is this going to be a bunch
Well,
of people leaving OpenAI?
so in terms of the engineers, let's go to that one first. Um, Recall last week, and I don't know if we touched on it, but like we definitely had it in the docket. There was a way to, sorry, there was an article saying that these folks were being offered upwards of $10 million. And so I think what's happened is, the war for talent for AI researchers is really, really heavy. And so depending on what happens next, that's what will impact the engineers. It does feel like the folks have been moving around in like groups, like the folks that went over to Anthropic, the folks that went over to XAI. And so it is feasible, if I were to bet, that if folks aren't happy with whatever direction the company's going in, and they haven't been able to properly participate in whatever monetization like structure exists from the cap table because of all the wonkiness that's created, that
Yeah,
I think one of the things Elon said very clearly about why creating XAI was in order to have the ability to recruit people to offer them equity that could grow.
sure.
So that could be something for a bunch of folks.
Now, was
Yeah,
Greg passed up for CEO? Is that why he quit? He didn't get the CEO slot. I wonder. Let's
yeah.
take another question. Just speculating here. Let's take another question from our amazing audience. Maybe you could bring 3 or 4 people up, Sonny.
Yeah, I am. I just it's spinning, but let me
Okay.
see here. I'm gonna add a couple people here real quick. We'll go with that. Let's keep going.
Okay.
Um,
Maybe just say the name of the person that you want
yeah.
to be able to
So
speak
we
when they
have
come up on stage.
carried interest.
Carried interest. Okay, an anonymous account.
Yeah.
Carried interest. You have. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, I personally
Well,
do not want
let's
to.
repeat the
Yeah.
comment,
Okay.
right?
Sorry.
You have it.
So great comment. The speaker was saying, "Hey, I've never seen this kind of dramatic firing. Dramatic firing equals personal misbehavior, misadventures, gnarly inappropriate stuff. And so maybe we're glossing over all that. I gave 3 disclaimers during this. I don't want to talk about that kind of stuff. If that's in fact what happened, we'll find out in due time, and that'll make this really easy to understand. But yeah, sure, it goes without saying that's a possibility. So I think it's kind of moot. And what's the point of speculating about something as egregious and ugly as that when we have no information? Speculating about the business stuff and the downstream impacts, I think that is, very valid for us to discuss here on This Week in Startups. Okay, next person.
All right, we have Travis.
Ooh. Hmm. APEC. Yeah. Okay. So the question and the comment was, I wonder if this was an international espionage security breach that occurred, and then that is why that's like such a heavy thing that this happened so swiftly. I think it's a pretty, Travis asked us that question. What do you think? I mean, it's like we were saying earlier, hitting AGI. It's a more fantastical concept here, but sometimes something weird and fantastical, that those things do happen, right? I mean, how many conspiracy theories, like yesterday's conspiracy theories become tomorrow's Pulitzer Prizes, right? There was a conspiracy theory that the church was covering up for sexual misconduct by priests, and then all of a sudden, boom, it was a Pulitzer for, I don't think that's the case here, obviously, but what do you think? Is that a possibility? This foreign espionage? I mean, you got to think there are actors who really would love to have the code base and data and everything.
Well, when it came to just to maybe talk through that, the U.S. government probably is happy with Sam, right? He's been the one in amongst a bunch of other people talking about regulation, right? And we had Bill Gurley on with us a couple of weeks ago and talking about regulation. So I don't think it would be U.S. government, but maybe some other governments are not happy with what's happening with regulation and sharing of technology. So that's possible. I could, we could put it on the bingo card. Like, I guess we have to create one of those now and see where this lands.
Absolutely. All right. 2,000 people watching on YouTube, 5,700 people on our Twitter /X Spaces.
Yeah,
apologies,
we have
Elon. Apologies, Elon. It's going to even take me a while to not say Twitter after 20 years of being on Twitter. On our X Spaces,
Compound
let's take another call. Another call. Keep it. Can we get a tight question? Tight question, so we can take 2 more. Mm-hmm. Okay, so this happened fast. Greg was stripped of his chairman title. Microsoft didn't know. That's a lot to happen in a short period of time there. And then who wins? Sonny, who wins? Who does this help most? Google?
In the shortest term, Google, I think, right? And next, Microsoft. Honestly, because
what really? Why does Microsoft benefit from the leadership change here? Because they have more control?
I think going back to that point, we were talking about master negotiator, like, who would you want to sit across from the table, Sam or someone else now, in terms of, hey, this has all happened, the funding requirements, the resource requirements, and how you can basically, strike a better deal for yourself, or maybe even buy the company.
Wow. Well, that's mind blowing. So Microsoft now here comes a conspiracy theory. So if this is a coup of some types, let's say Sam tripped, people then stab him in the back. He makes a mistake of some kind. Let's say the security mistake, a conflict of interest mistake, whatever. It's something that's not like unforgivable, but maybe some people are like, hey, we got to come for the king, but we best not miss. And then Microsoft's like, oh, power vacuum. maybe it's time for us to buy all this up. And then, yeah, the nonprofit will get a bunch of money and they can give it and kumbaya, save the whales. Pretty interesting concept. Yeah, so that's an interesting
Yeah.
point. Microsoft couldn't buy had a hard time buying a video game maker. How do they get this through regulators? That's a really astute point. And I think the way to get it through is to just get the code base, get the weights, get the talent, and then you don't have to buy the company. You just
Yeah.
sucked up
Buy
all the
it without
talent.
buying it. Buy it
Yeah.
without buying it.
Hmm.
Mm.
Interesting point. Hmm. Okay. For those listening on the YouTube, caller says, hey, when you sign up for enterprise on OpenAI, it gives you a choice to go to Azure with Microsoft or to do OpenAI. OpenAI tries to steer that to get you on the newer models. But maybe the way Microsoft takes this all over and, does the second act of this coup, and this is a coup of types, or it's either going to fall into the category of a coup or it's going to fall into the category of, a fall from grace kind of situation. If it is a coup, yeah, they have that possibility to just take over the enterprise business as part of their negotiation with OpenAI to give them the next slug of capital, give them access to these servers. So, man, this is one of the most
Okay.
dynamic situations I've ever seen in my career.
Uh,
We'll do
okay,
another
Kel. So
emergency pod.
a
Oh,
quick
breaking news.
breaking news. Yeah, yeah. So
Who?
Kara Swisher.
Who?
Yeah,
Who?
let's Kara Swisher. Yeah,
Who?
exactly. Yeah.
God,
Again.
she hates me. I
Uh,
used to be friends with
and
her. Now she hates me.
I,
I don't
I
know.
know, but we got to bring it up because
Okay, what did she say?
let me just I'll bring up the tweet here as well so folks can see it. But it says scoop a lot more departures of top folks at OpenAI tonight, and Sam will make a
Hmm.
statement. But as she understands, it was a misalignment of the profit versus nonprofit adherence at the company.
Mm-hmm.
Developer day was an issue.
Hmm.
Yeah. And sources
Well,
tell me the profit direction of the company under Altman and the speed of development, which could be too risky. So this kind of lined up with that Hacker
the
News post.
Reddit, yeah, the
Or
Hacker News
Reddit, or
post,
yeah,
and
yeah,
the Reddit,
yeah,
both of them were kind of
yeah,
in that zone.
yeah,
So yeah, moving fast and breaking things, I guess,
yeah,
is going to be the speculation for a lot of folks. And then, which is also we said was this corporate structure is rife with conflict. So
yeah.
that was our position from the beginning:
Yeah.
conflicts of
And if you go to
interest,
the
deal
board member
making.
thing and you go like, look, maybe just all the non-employee board members, nonprofit board members say, hey, what's going on here? This doesn't seem very nonprofit-y, right?
Well, and here's the thing: you could all get pinched, and this is where having these kind of crazy board structures. You bring some people onto the board to be independent directors. They start getting counsel. You got lawyers. One set of lawyers says in one ear, we're the original lawyers and Sam wanted to do this. And, now Sam's not in the room. Yeah, it was a little aggressive. There are these things we warned him about, but he wanted to go forward anyway. And, our advice was maybe a little more research, but Sam went for it. And then somebody else in the other ear says, hey, if Sam went for it and you guys get pinched, you're all going to jail, or you're all going to, this could pierce the veil, or you guys could be involved
Yeah.
in lawsuits forever, even if it doesn't pierce the corporate veil. The IRS is a humorless group of career individuals, and the government does not like when people don't pay their taxes. I know this is a newsflash to many people listening here on the live stream and the pod. You really don't want to play games with giving the government their fair share. And if everybody's selling in secondary, the secondary thing comes to mind here. Okay, we're going fast and loose. Maybe we interpreted the law. Remember, Elon said, I have a lot of questions about this. Like, how does this work? And I think Elon said, like, if everybody could build a nonprofit, do a for-profit, make a bunch of money, and then not pay taxes, like maybe we should all be moving towards this. And I kind of looked at that too. I didn't ask lawyers, but I was asking folks, like who want to be B corporations and all this nonsense, silliness, kumbaya, save the whales nonsense. Like if you're going to build a company, just be a moronic capitalist, then give your money away when you sell your shares. You don't need to kind of pollute the waters of capitalism with nonprofits and make some weird Frankenstein corporate structure. And they made a Frankenstein corporate structure, just like Firefox had a Frankenstein corporate structure. And that led to, I can tell you, I would guess tens of millions in legal bills over the last decade to just navigate the fact that Firefox was a nonprofit that was throwing off hundreds of millions of dollars in search revenue from their search deal with Google. So there is some history here. And yeah, that would there's a lot of going back to this decision and who made that decision. And that decision could get you pinched. And then if people can get pinched, you know what they do? They flip. Self-preservation is a very powerful instinct.
Yeah. I mean, kind of, I think it was our top one. It's just like something in this area of structure and conflict. And, it's like seemingly like, and you said it, 72 hours, we're going to know everything that's happened. Like, look, we might even get it before then.
All right. We got to redo our percentages. Security breach, conflict of interest with Sam's deal making, the nonprofit for-profit structure, other. Take a moment. I'm going to give 10% to security breach, 10% to other. I'll go 50-50 on the rest. So 40-40. I got 40%, the original sin of the nonprofit for-profit Franken structure.
Yeah.
I'm going to go 50% Franken structure, 30% conflicts in deal making, 10% other, 10% security breach. What do you got, Sonny?
I'm gonna take a page out of Elon's book. What does he always pull up? Occam's razor, right?
Sure.
Like, the most obvious answers. And so I'm gonna go 90% corporate structure, profit, nonprofit, 5% Franken structure, and 5% conflict of interest, and put everything else in 5%.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
Time is going to tell. Thank you to everybody who came on the spaces. Give me a thumbs up if you like this. Maybe we'll do more of these. Apparently, a large number of people did seem to like it. So thank you for the thumbs up, everybody.
Sorry we couldn't get everyone up as a speaker.
Yeah, but I think this was fun.
There's a lot of people to choose from. The UI needs to do something that helps you filter it somehow.
What I would like to do is, when it has requests, if I go to the request tab, I'm going to talk to Elon about this. On the request tabs, when you get too many requests, I know that sounds obnoxious.
I know. Who?
I'm going to talk to Sandeep. Everybody has friends. I mean, it's not.
I got it.
The note should be who are the most followed of the group. It should list the most followed people first. I think what it does is it lists the verified and then it lists everybody else. I would list it verified, most followed, then unverified, most followed. That would be easier to figure out who's got the most followers as just one proxy for maybe they'll have intel. I would also like people to be able to type in their question when they request to speak. So that would be a very interesting, you request to speak and say, what topic do you want to talk about?
The same way you can do an emoji, you should be able to like have a thing that's like a little text box thing that shows this person's typed their question.
Yeah. Because then I could either read the question or I could have you come up and ask it, but that would be like a good pre-screen, like a pre-screening thing on the radio. All right.
Yeah.
This has been an amazing emergency episode of This Week in Startups. You can search your podcast player for This Week in Startups and subscribe. I do it 4 days a week. Every Monday, Sandeep and I do AI Demo Day. Monday equals AI Demo Day. Sandeep looks all week at all of the different AI things that have been released. He then presents them to me. We then give them a letter grade, and we try to learn every Monday the latest and greatest.
And sometimes you even invest.
And sometimes I find a company and I just, I get a little tasty poo. I get a slice. Sandeep's company is Definitive Intelligence. If you're doing large scale AI stuff, you can reach out to him. He's at Sandeep First Name Club on X, formerly known as Twitter. I am at Jason, and we'll see you all next time on This Week in Startups Live. All right, I think we did it. That's it. That's the show. Is that the show? I think that's the show. How did we do? We do good? Okay.